I was not there. I don't know what you guys
Yes,
want
you
from
were
me.
there.
No, I was not there. I was not
Yes,
there.
Ryan was raised in Columbia, Missouri, a college town in the center of the state. His father worked in real estate, and his mother was a reading coach. He also had an older sister. By most accounts, Ryan was a typical teenager. He was laid back, he was well liked by his family, and he was more interested in friends and parties than being a model student. In the late hours of Halloween night in 2001, Ryan and his friend, Chuck Erickson, spent the night out drinking and using drugs. That same night, just a couple blocks away, a man by the name of Kent Heitholt was working late as a sports editor at the Columbia Daily Tribune. At around 2:15 a.m. on November 1st, the janitor of the building walked outside for a cigarette break and saw Kent face down on the ground. There were two men near his car, and the janitor panicked, ran inside, and called her supervisor. Her and her supervisor then called 911 at exactly 2:26 a.m. Police responded shortly after and found that Kent had been severely beaten and strangled to death just moments after he left the building. So, an investigation started. Police recovered fingerprints inside Heitholt's car, hair in his hand, and there were footprints from his blood walking away from his body. The janitors gave a description of the men they saw, and then a composite sketch was drawn. The crime went unsolved for nearly 2 years, until October 2003, the media covered the murder once again in the newspaper. Chuck, the friend that Ryan had been partying with that Halloween night 2 years earlier, saw the newspaper article that detailed the case. He began having dreams that he was somehow involved because he couldn't remember everything that happened that night.
This is all right. This is after reading the newspaper article in October, and this is kind of what I put together with. I mean, I don't know if I'm just flipping out.
He was convinced he had something to do with the murder. It was only a couple blocks away from where him and Ryan were that night. They had been blackout drunk and on drugs, and Chuck just couldn't shake the feeling. He later talked to Ryan about his concerns, but Ryan told him not to worry about it and to let it go. But Chuck just couldn't do it. A month later, exactly 2 years after the murder, Chuck saw the composite sketches that were drawn at the beginning of the case. He believed that the drawing was of his face, so he went to a different friend, not Ryan, and explained the situation. That friend then called police and told them to investigate both Chuck and Ryan. This is where Ryan Ferguson entered the investigation. Wrongful convictions usually come from several weak points that reinforce one another. And in this case, the first major issue was confession evidence. A confession often sounds powerful because it appears to come from someone close to the crime. But the difference between a confession and a reliable confession is often overlooked. Confessions usually occur during an interrogation. Sometimes interrogations are synonymous with interview, and while every state has different laws that surround how to properly conduct an interrogation, the psychology behind the practice generally stays the same. Interrogation rooms are often designed to be controlled. The suspect is put in a bland, small room that has a table and some chairs. They usually should face the door, and they aren't handcuffed so they don't develop any subconscious feelings that they're being trapped. The goal of the room is to make them uncomfortable enough to feel nervous, but not so uncomfortable that they drown in anxiety. Instead, interrogations usually begin in a conversational tone. This builds pressure naturally over time. The officer that enters the room should come across as calm and conversational. They're not dressed in uniform, there's no visible weapons, and they start with a casual tone. They'll usually sit adjacent to the suspect, which is a psychological technique that allows the officers to be close enough to get at their face, but able to back off when the time requires it. Then the officer will read the suspect their Miranda rights, which basically tells them that they have the right to remain silent and get an attorney. The officer will also explain that this is just standard and that the suspect should talk right now. The goal is to get the suspect talking freely, keeping them engaged and willing to explain. By doing this, the suspect believes that they can clear their name, and silence makes them look guilty. But what many don't realize is that the interrogation room isn't meant to help the suspect. There's one goal and one goal only, and that's to extract a confession. In cases involving more than one suspect, police can suggest that one person was more responsible, more aggressive, or more involved than the other. For the person in that room, blaming the other suspect can begin to feel like a way to reduce their own responsibility. This is what happened in the Ryan Ferguson case. The false confession didn't come from Ferguson himself, but it came from the statements of his friend, Chuck.
You better start thinking very clearly.
Okay.
Because it's you that is on this chopping block.
By March 2004, police had contacted Chuck. Chuck was worried that he might have been involved in the murder because of the gaps in his memory that night.
This is kind of what I put together with what could have happened. I remember we were at the club, we ran out of money, like he'd been asking his sister to borrow money, and then from there on, I'm just kind of presuming what happened. I'm making presumptions based on what I read in the newspaper.
At this point, Chuck believes he's helping the investigation, and most likely trying to clear up his confusion to avoid feeling guilty. However, much information about the case wasn't public knowledge at this point, so the officer had to now guide Chuck to a confession without putting words directly in his mouth. Chuck knew the victim had been strangled. He just didn't know how. After hours of interrogation, Chuck was finally convinced that he and Ryan had something to do with the murder.
Let's go back to when you were talking about how you saw Ryan strangle this guy. We know what the guy got strangled with. That's kind of the thing I've been holding back from you.
Okay.
All right. Is it possible that you know what he was strangled with and just didn't want to tell me? Because I know.
No, like I think it was a shirt or something.
Yeah, well, I know it wasn't a shirt.
It's like maybe a bungee cord or something from his car. I don't see why he'd have a rope in his car.
At this point, Chuck appears to be guessing. He doesn't realize that he's incriminating himself, and he thinks he's simply trying to find whatever information the officer is looking for.
Well, we know for a fact that his belt was ripped off of his pants and he was strangled with his belt.
Really?
The officer provides a critical detail of the case. Kent Heitholt was strangled with a belt. Once this detail enters the investigation, the story moves in a more specific direction. Chuck can now describe his and Ryan's involvement, but he can divide the responsibility. Ryan becomes the person who removed the belt and strangled Heitholt, and Chuck can place Ryan at the center of the killing.
Is it possible Ryan could have got him and you not know about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's possible Ryan could have strangled this guy with his belt, got the keys, and you not know.
With the man's belt?
Yeah.
His own belt?
Yes.
Ryan Ferguson's involvement in the case came directly from Chuck Erickson's statement.
Dude, I was not there, man. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Well, I'm telling you right now, Chuck put you there. Right?
Yes.
The time frames you're telling me with when this murder occurred does not fit. Then you come up deceptive. That's 3 strikes.
What do you mean it doesn't fit?
It doesn't fit.
I don't know the time.
I've already told you. You say you stayed at the bar till 1:30.
Yes. When was the murder? I don't even know when it was.
Well, again, this is poker. We're not telling you everything because you know why? You ain't telling us everything. But listen to me. You wanted to hear it, I'm going to tell you. All right? We're trying to help you out, but you're just being so damn hard-headed I can't believe it.
Not, man.
During the interrogation, he repeatedly claimed that he had nothing to do with the murder, and he guessed that Chuck must have somehow committed the murder after Ryan had dropped him off at home the night they were partying. At this point, the police already have their story, so Ryan's interrogation isn't about getting to the truth. Instead, their goal is to make their case stronger by trying to get Ryan to tell them a version that loosely matches to Chuck's.
You're being hard-headed, but we'll get around it.
Man, I was
There's
not,
no way you
there's
could have taken
nothing
Chuck.
I can say,
There's
man.
no
I
way
was
you
not
could have taken
there.
Chuck home and him make it back to do this all by himself. There's no way.
I don't know.
What's the reason Chuck's lying? If
Dude, I don't know, man.
He's known Chuck forever, right?
I've known Chuck since junior high. Hung out with him for a few
Has ever
years.
had any quarrels over
No, man.
girlfriends,
No.
athletics, sports cards,
No.
racing cars, nothing?
No.
You know, you keep saying that. You don't have to remind me about what I've told you.
Well, I was not there. I don't know what you guys
Yes,
want
you
from
were
me.
there.
No, I was not there. I was not there.
There's no possible way that you could have been driving him home and him be seen by Dallas at the same time. It can't happen. It's unless he's got an identical twin that knows exactly what he's doing. It ain't happening.
Well, there's 12 minutes there. Maybe Chuck killed somebody, came back to the club, and I drove home to Dallas.
You know what?
I don't know, man. I did
Murder
not.
happened after club closed. That's your problem. You've been hanging your head on them. I didn't see Chuck through the bar all night.
Dude, I'm hanging my
It
head on. I
happened
didn't
after-
do anything,
Yeah.
man.
Ryan never gave in to the pressure, so the case had to be built another way. The prosecution offered Chuck a plea deal, 25 years in prison, if he testified that Ryan was the murderer. During the trial, Chuck took the stand and played out the attack. This included Ryan taking a belt and strangling the victim in the middle of the parking lot.
He had a belt
and he had his foot on his back, on the victim's back, and he was pulling up on the belt.
Prosecutors also secured Jerry Trump, who was the supervisor of the janitor the night of the murder, that he recognized Ryan.
Would you point to that individual or individuals, please?
Yes.
Now the case has structure. Chuck supplied the inside story, Jerry supplied the outside identification. Neither were physical evidence, but together they gave the jury a complete story. The defense challenged the story, but the prosecution had given the jury a version of the case that was simple enough to follow. On December 5th, 2005, Ryan was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Ryan immediately filed a direct appeal, which challenges any legal errors that are in the trial record. Ryan couldn't just claim he was innocent. Instead, he had to show that something was legally wrong in the case. He couldn't do this, so his conviction was upheld. Ryan then filed an appeal for post-conviction relief, which basically allows the appeal to look at issues that aren't in the trial record. But again, this was denied. Unfortunately, there wasn't much else Ryan can do, until 4 years into his sentence, when Chuck suddenly came forward and made a huge statement.
I made up the statement about Ryan giving me the tire iron and saying that we might get messed up without it. I imagined that it might have occurred that way because I knew I had beaten the victim with a tire iron. I could not accept in my conscious mind that I was the sole perpetrator and aggressor, so I put a lot of the blame on Ryan. I don't think that much of it was even consciously done. It was just too hard to admit to myself and others that I had killed someone. I could not even accept the possibility of it. We had never done robberies before. We never did them after. We broke a lot of stuff, which was probably what we had in mind when we left the club. I believe that I flipped out and committed the entire act alone and with little forethought. I remember feeling psychotically giddy, if that's understandable. I did not tell Ryan what I was going to do. He had no idea that I would act in such an aggressive manner. I don't remember how much of it he was there for. He could not stop me. He could not stop me, though he tried at the end. If he had wanted to stop me before and during much of the act, I was armed with a tire tool. Ryan did not say, "Come on, let's get this over with," while I was stalking the victim. He was actually pleading, "Come on, let's go." He did not want a part in it. Again, I turned it around because I did not want to accept the responsibility of the sole perpetrator. I strangled Kent Heitholt to death.
Chuck gave a recorded statement that he, not Ryan, was the one who committed the murder. Ryan was unsure why Chuck came forward in this way, but it opened the door to another appeal. Ryan filed what's called a state habeas, which is a petition that Ryan's imprisonment is unlawful because of the problems with the conviction and also based on Chuck's new information. While this appeal was denied, a similar appeal was finally heard in 2013. On September 10, 2013, Ryan's petition was heard in court. Chuck and Jerry both recanted their statements and claimed Ryan was innocent. 2 months later, nearly 10 years after Ryan was sent to prison, his conviction was vacated and he became a free man at 29 years old.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
To get arrested and to get charged for a crime you didn't commit, it's incredibly easy, and you can lose your life very fast. But to get out of prison, it takes an army, as you can see, and an incredible group of individuals, family, friends, attorneys who are willing to sacrifice so much. And, you know, it's just amazing to be here knowing that other people are in my situation, don't have the support and the help that I've had. So, you know, this is not an anomaly. I think we need to look at other cases and be aware that this is part of our justice system, and, you know, there are more innocent people in prison. So keep your eyes open and support them as well.
After his release, Ryan wrote a fitness book. He became involved in wrongful conviction advocacy and later helped produce media focused on other wrongful conviction cases. He also appeared in the TV show The Amazing Race, claiming that it was a way of trying to live a normal life. In 2014, Ryan filed a civil rights lawsuit against the city of Columbia, police officers, and others that were involved in the case. In 2017, 3 years later, he won an $11 million judgment. But the city's insurer never paid, and in 2025, a Missouri judge ordered the insurer to pay an additional $44 million, an attempt to make up for taking 10 years away from an innocent man. Unlike Ryan, Chuck wasn't exonerated. He has since claimed that every story he's told has been fabricated due to pressure from the police, the prosecutor, and even his own attorney. A movement, Free Charles Erickson, promotes Chuck's innocence. And on January 9th, 2023, Chuck was granted parole. He is now released from prison, but hopes one day the Missouri court will recognize his innocence. Lastly is Kent Heitholt, the husband, father, and sports editor who was brutally murdered in that parking lot next to his car. If Chuck is truly innocent, then Kent's murder has no clean resolution. This means that the murderer is still out there and has never been caught.